Most beginners think cleaning an aquarium means making everything look spotless. They scrub the glass, rinse the filter under the sink, stir the gravel until the water turns cloudy, and replace as much water as possible because they believe clean water means a clean tank. But in an aquarium, cleaning the wrong way can be more dangerous than not cleaning at all. A healthy aquarium is not sterile, it is alive. The gravel, the filter, the sponge, and even the brown gunk hiding under the decorations are all part of a living system. The goal is not to destroy that system. The goal is to remove waste while keeping the good bacteria alive. Today, I want to show you the simple, safe way to gravel vac an aquarium and clean a sponge filter without crashing the tank. This is one of those basic skills that sounds easy, but many fish keepers get it wrong in the beginning. They either do too little and let waste build up, or they do too much and accidentally remove the bacteria that keep their fish alive. Once you understand the right method, aquarium maintenance becomes much less stressful. Your water stays clearer, your fish act healthier, and your tank becomes easier to manage month after month. The first thing you need is a gravel vacuum. It does not need to be fancy. Most basic siphon gravel vacs work in the same way. You have a larger plastic tube that goes into the aquarium and a smaller hose that carries dirty water out into a bucket. You will also need a bucket, a tub, or anything clean that can safely hold aquarium water. Never use a bucket that has had soap, chemicals, cleaners, or pesticides in it. Aquarium fish are much more sensitive than people realize, and even a tiny amount of chemical residue can cause serious problems. Before you start, look at the tank and think about where the waste collects. Fish waste, leftover food, dead plant pieces, and mulm usually settle behind rocks, under wood, around decorations, and near the base of filters. If your aquarium has decorations that can be moved safely, move them out of the way before you begin. This makes the job easier and keeps you from constantly stopping and restarting the siphon. If there is algae on the glass, scrape or wipe the glass first. That way, loose algae can be removed during the water change instead of floating around the tank afterward. Now start the siphon. Put the gravel vacuum tube fully into the water so it fills with aquarium water. Then lift the tube just high enough for water to begin flowing down the hose. Once the water starts moving, place the tube back into the aquarium at an angle so you do not trap a large air bubble inside. If air gets stuck in the tube, the siphon may stop. The simple trick is to keep the tube full of water and let gravity do the work. Once the hose is lower than the aquarium and the water starts flowing, the siphon will keep pulling water out. When you begin vacuuming the gravel, do not randomly poke around the tank. Work in rows, the same way you would mow a lawn. Start in one corner and move across the front, then move slightly back and come across again. This keeps you from missing large sections of the substrate. Most beginners make the mistake of chasing whatever dirt they can see. They jump from one dirty spot to another, but they leave hidden waste behind. A systematic pattern is much better. Push the gravel vacuum tube gently into the gravel. You will see gravel, sand, or small particles rise inside the tube. The heavier substrate should fall back down, while lighter waste continues upward and out through the hose. If the gravel rises too high, or you are losing too much substrate, pinch or kink the hose with your hand. This reduces the flow and lets the gravel fall back down. Then release the hose and keep pulling out the dirty water. This pinch and release method gives you control. You are not just sucking everything out of the tank. You are separating the waste from the substrate. This matters a lot if you have sand or fine gravel. If the flow is too strong, you can remove too much sand. If the flow is too weak, you will not remove enough waste. The goal is to let the dirt lift away while the substrate drops back into place. Think of the gravel vacuum like a chimney. You want the dirty cloud to go up and out of the aquarium, not spread back into the tank. If you lift the tube too quickly while it is full of waste, the debris can fall back down and make the water cloudy. Slow, controlled movement is better than rushing. Pay close attention around decorations. Under rocks, wood, caves, and plants, waste often builds up in places you cannot see. This is why a tank can look clean from the front but still have a lot of trapped debris in the substrate. If a decoration can be moved safely, lift it, vacuum the area underneath, and then put it back. Be careful not to crush fish, shrimp, snails, or plant roots while moving anything. If you keep small fish or fry, check the gravel vacuum tube often. Sometimes curious fish swim too close. If that happens, pinch the hose immediately to stop the suction and give the fish time to move away. For most normal aquariums, you do not need to remove all the water. A good starting point is about 1/3 of the tank water. That is enough to remove waste and refresh the aquarium without shocking the fish. Some tanks need more frequent water changes, and some need less, depending on stocking level, feeding, filtration, plant growth, and water quality. But if you are a beginner and you do not know where to start, cleaning the substrate and changing about 1/3 of the water once a month is a safe general routine for many lightly stocked tanks. There is one important exception. If your aquarium is heavily planted, do not dig deep into the substrate around the roots. Plant roots create their own living zone under the surface. If you shove the gravel vacuum deep into a planted area, you can damage roots and disturb the soil or nutrient layer. In planted tanks, hover the gravel vacuum just above the surface and remove loose debris from the top. Let the plants use some of the organic matter as food. A planted aquarium should not be cleaned the same way as a bare or lightly decorated fish tank. Once you are finished vacuuming, do not just pull the tube out of the water while it is full of dirty water. Cover the end of the tube with your hand or pinch the hose so the dirty water does not fall back into the aquarium. Lift it out carefully and let the remaining water drain into your bucket. This small step prevents a final cloud of waste from dumping back into the tank after you just worked to remove it. Now let us talk about the sponge filter, because this is where many beginners make the biggest mistake. A sponge filter may look dirty, but it is also full of beneficial bacteria. Those bacteria process fish waste and help keep ammonia and nitrite under control. If you take the sponge filter to the sink and blast it under tap water, you may remove too much of that bacterial colony. Tap water can contain chlorine or chloramine, and even if the risk is not always instant disaster, it is still a risk you do not need to take. The safer method is to clean the sponge filter in old aquarium water. Use the water you just removed during the water change. That water has the same temperature, the same general chemistry, and no fresh chlorine. It is much safer for the bacteria living inside the sponge. Before removing the sponge filter from the tank, do not just grab it and lift it straight out. If the sponge is full of trapped waste, lifting it quickly can release a dirty cloud into the aquarium. A better trick is to use a clean fish bag or container. Place the bag around the sponge filter while it is still underwater. Gently slide the bag over the sponge and lift the whole thing out while the dirty water stays inside the bag. This keeps most of the trapped debris from exploding back into the aquarium. Once the sponge filter is out, disconnect the airline or lift tube if needed. Put the sponge into the bucket of old tank water and squeeze it repeatedly. The water will probably turn brown, sometimes almost like chocolate milk. That is normal. You are removing trapped waste, dead plant material, fish waste, and fine particles. Pour out the dirty water if needed, collect a little more old tank water, and squeeze the sponge again. Usually, after a few passes, the water becomes much lighter. You do not need the sponge to look brand new. In fact, you should not try to make it perfectly clean. A sponge filter only needs to be open enough for water and air to move through it again. If you clean it until it looks sterile, you may be removing more bacteria than necessary. The goal is flow, not perfection. When you squeeze the sponge and very little dirty material comes out, it is clean enough. Do not let the sponge sit dry for a long time. The beneficial bacteria need moisture and oxygen. Keep the sponge wet and return it to the aquarium soon after cleaning. Reconnect the filter, place it back where it belongs, and make sure bubbles are moving through it properly. The tank may get a tiny bit cloudy for a short time, but if you cleaned carefully, it should clear up again. The dirty water you removed from the tank can be useful for houseplants or garden plants. as long as you did not use medications or chemicals in the aquarium. Old aquarium water contains nutrients from fish waste, and many plants enjoy it. So instead of thinking of it as waste, you can treat it as free plant water. After the gravel is cleaned and the sponge filter is rinsed, refill the aquarium with fresh water that has been treated with a good water conditioner. Try to match the temperature close to the tank water. Fish do not like sudden changes. Pour the water back slowly so you do not blast the substrate, uproot plants, or stress the fish. If you are filling from a bucket, pour onto a plate, decoration, or your hand to soften the flow. The most important lesson is this. Aquarium cleaning is not about making the tank spotless. It is about keeping balance. Remove the waste that can rot and pollute the water, but protect the bacteria that keep the aquarium stable. Clean the gravel, but do not destroy the whole substrate. Rinse the sponge, but do not sterilize it. Change water, but do not shock the fish. Once you understand that balance, maintenance becomes simple. A clean aquarium should still feel alive. The filter should still contain bacteria. The substrate should still support the system. The plants should still have roots in a stable environment. Your job is not to reset the aquarium every time you clean it. Your job is to guide the system back into balance before waste gets out of control. For a beginner, a simple routine is enough. Once a month, inspect the tank. Look at the substrate, the filter flow, the fish behavior, and the water clarity. If the sponge filter is slowing down, rinse it in old tank water. If waste is collecting on the bottom, use the gravel vacuum. If the tank is planted, hover above the substrate instead of digging deep. If the fish are heavily stocked or you feed a lot, you may need to clean more often. If the tank is lightly stocked and full of healthy plants, you may need less. The worst thing you can do is clean only when the tank looks terrible. By the time the water smells bad, the gravel is packed with waste, and the filter barely flows, the aquarium is already under stress. Small, regular maintenance is much easier than emergency cleaning. A short, calm cleaning session can prevent cloudy water, algae problems, poor oxygen, and unhealthy fish. So the next time you clean your aquarium, slow down and do it with control. Move the decorations, start the siphon properly, vacuum in rows, pinch the hose when the substrate rises, remove about 1/3 of the water, clean the sponge in old tank water, and put everything back gently. That simple method protects your fish, protects your bacteria, and keeps the aquarium healthy for the long run. If your tank has been cloudy, smelly, or full of waste, no matter how often you change water, the problem might not be how much you clean. It might be how you clean. Once you stop destroying the biological balance and start removing waste the right way, the entire aquarium becomes easier to manage.